talk to us for a little while if you want to. We got 3 minutes. I just didn't see the little strings that used to be.
What happened to that? All the little string of
They
microphones.
upgraded our computers and that
How much that cost?
cleaning paperwork's all night.
So that little deal's doing what all these other strings used to do.
And the other one wasn't compatible with Windows 7, and they upgraded us finally from XP to Windows 7.
So that's gonna pick us all up talking.
What's your job? Oh, wow, that's impressive.
The half of my minutes that I don't
Thank you.
have
Appreciate it.
are on planning's recorder, and she couldn't get them out for me. So we gotta have help. So that's why you don't have minutes.
That's not good when you have to have help to
That's
get
why I
stuff
skipped
right.
A, B, C.
And they just get people.
Well, they said need your information, so I'll make that snap.
So we don't have none of these minutes.
I won't start at 7. I'll say I start at 7. We'll keep things like that.
6:59.
Susan, something didn't go right.
Call this meeting of the Union County Board of Adjustment, March 9th, 2015 to order. First thing I'd like to do tonight before we get into the agenda is I'd like to ask Mr. Jensen if he could. He needs to make an official introduction of a new staff member, and let him do that for us first.
Well, as you all know, I've been in this position for about the last 10.5 years, almost 11, and I've really enjoyed it. I've worked with a lot of you guys for a really long time, so I appreciate that. But I've moved into another role at the county, dealing with city duties. So, Mr. Jim King has taken over. He came on board about 2 months ago. December 15th, so almost 3 months ago. And doing a very good job. He's got a lot of experience in planning and zoning administration. I think he was in the town of Mooresville as a senior planner for a while.
I was there for 10 years.
10 years. And town of Matthews most recently as the town of Matthews zoning administrator. So got a lot of good experience, and I think it'll be a good transition. I don't think you're going to miss any beats or anything. He's probably going to do a whole lot better than me. So. But again, Jim King's introduction.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We welcome you, sir. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
We'll try to get you out of here before 10:30, 11 o'clock. That's our goal. Right?
Yes, maybe.
Mr. Hutton?
8:30.
8:30 max. What comes on at night?
My hourly rate goes up, I have to.
Item A, B, and C, unfortunately, we do not have those minutes yet. Some issues with recorders, and so we'll get those, and as soon as we do, we'll approve them, but we can't approve them without them. So we'll move on to item D, and I would just say on item D, there's been a little change in the ordinance, we think, and so instead of us having to actually approve these, we just basically, staff has looked these over, they've checked them, and have given their approval of them. So this is basically an information item for us going forward. We don't have to look at each one of them anymore. I talked to Mr. Tilley. We used to have lots more than this, and they've really gone down over the years. So we'll move on then to item E, determination of quorum, and I believe we do have a quorum tonight. Mr. Hutton will be setting in as the voting member, replacing Louis. So we're glad to have you. And we also have an additional alternate tonight. Jonathan's here, and so Jonathan will hear the case, and if for any reason he had to step in and vote, he can. So we'll move on and open a public hearing. Item A, determination of conflicts of interest for special use permit 2015-001. You all had an opportunity to see this. At this time, if anyone has a conflict, now would be the time to address that conflict.
No conflicts, but just wondering if anyone else got a phone call today from I don't even remember who it was, but an individual hawking, wondering if I'd heard about solar in the area and wondering if I wanted to get involved with that. Or if that was just a random telemarketer that happened to call my house on the day that I was hearing this particular petition.
Well, I wasn't home today, but I
Fabulous.
did not get I don't think. a phone.
All right, moving on then.
All right. So Mr. Hutton's not got a problem. He
No
just
problem.
got an interesting phone call.
Yeah.
Okay, that being said, I'd like to ask the land use administrator to come forward and be sworn. You swear the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, sir. Is the petition complete?
Yes, sir.
All right. This time I'll ask for a motion to hear the petition.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I can skip number 6 that I used to have to say all the time. I'm glad to skip that. But this time, Mr. King, you can come forward and give us a brief background on this item.
If you'll be patient for 1 second here, we're trying to wake this computer up.
We can do that. Technology.
Love it.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
I'm seeing stuff.
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you so much for bearing with me on this. I've got a short little PowerPoint to explain the proposed project here. I'll keep it brief and to the point. The property is located at 1504 Old Highway 74. It's owned by Jose Sanchez Brinston. It looks like it's in a estate here, and the applicant is BG Stewart Solar Farm LLC. This right here is giving you a larger picture of where the location is. It's if you look up to the close to the top of your screen, you'll see Old Highway 74, and then over to the left, looks like it's Old Pageland. You can see the other part of that. Yeah, Marshall Road right there. This parcel is, and we'll get into the zoning here. This parcel right here is surrounded mostly by the town of Marshville right there. What you see in the purple is the Marshville zoning jurisdiction. That's in the green is the county zoning jurisdiction. So the surrounding zoning for the county is predominantly RA40, and the parcel itself is zoned RA40, and it's surrounded on the other two sides by the town of Marshville. The project itself encompasses 2 parcels. One parcel is in Union County, the other parcel is in Marshville. We're here tonight looking at the parcel in the Union County. We're having to treat this as this parcel within the county as its own development, because we can't look at any of the zoning in Marshville to dictate how that is developed. So for this particular parcel right here, they will have to meet all the setback requirements for all property lines, not just those to the exterior of the project. Now, the other thing I want to point out about what you're looking at right now, this is a conceptual site plan. It's when we get further into the process, and provided that the special use permit is approved both for the county and for Marshall, a more detailed plan will be submitted for site plan review. This is giving you an overview of what an existing facility looks like. This facility is actually in Marshall's jurisdiction right here. It's at the 600 block of West Union Street. The top left-hand corner is giving you an example of what the panels look like. The middle picture is giving you an example of what it looks like from an aerial view, and then on the bottom right-hand corner of what you would see from a ground view. Staff recommendations. Staff basically has 3 recommendations right here. The first recommendation is the applicant needs to prove that the project is in harmony with the surrounding area. I do want to apologize for the second bullet where it says contingency plan. That really should be a decommissioning plan. The staff would like to see the applicant provide us with a decommissioning plan should the facility cease to desist. That, you know, how long would it take them to get this property back to its natural state form? And then the third is, as we would move on, they would have to meet all the applicable zoning requirements. And the 3 that really stand out would be the setback and yard requirements, the screening around the exterior boundaries of the property to less intense property uses, and then the tree save area within the required yards and setbacks. So, again, I apologize for the contingency plan. It should say decommissioning plan. This was an excerpt out of Friday's newspaper talking about Duke Power wants to pay solar farms for less for the power. You know, this was just kind of an example. Should something happen, or should the facility be decommissioned, how do they plan to bring it back to its natural state? The type 2 screening here, I've identified the adjacent boundaries there in red. This is where you'd have to have the type 2 screening. On the right-hand side, I've given it an illustration of what the screening would be. Basically, it'd be about 6 foot in height hedge with 1 tree planted every, I believe it's 50 foot off center. And this will be supplemental because there is some existing vegetation along the property's edge, and I'll show you that in a additional slide, but this will be supplemental to the existing vegetation that would need to be saved. Here's an aerial of the property right here. The areas that are circled in red are the areas where the tree save provisions would apply. So we would need the applicant to fully comply with our tree preservation ordinance. And last but not least, staff does support this request, provided that the applicant can prove that it is in harmony with the surrounding area, and that as part of the conditions of approval, should the board decide to approve this special use application. And again, what staff's recommending that you approve is the use itself, not a site-specific plan, but that you would incorporate staff's recommendations as far as conditions of approval. At this time, if you have any questions, staff will be happy to answer them. And applicant is here to address the board also. I did want to point out to the board, we have not had any phone calls or any opposition to this request.
I have one question. You're saying the shrubbery and the shrubbery, the new shrubbery to be installed back up right there on the right.
Yes, sir.
The height of these trees or shrubbery, you're saying they'll be about 6 feet?
At
Maturity?
At maturity, you should be 6 foot in height.
And the shrubs that are around it are 3 feet?
I believe that in this right here, there's one illustration in the zoning ordinance that kind of covers. I might have copied the wrong one out of here. It's supposed to be the type 2 is supposed to be 6 foot in height, 1 tree every. Is it 40 foot off center or 50 foot off center? 40. Every 40 foot off center.
And then the shrubbery between the trees, will that be there or not be?
Wherever existing vegetation does not meet this height criteria and the opaqueness, then they would have to supply supplemental vegetation to make sure that they meet that standard.
Okay, the reason I'm asking that, looking at the typical solar panel positioning, am I reading that correct, that it, on the high side is 6 feet 7¼ inches to the high side? On this paper that you're giving us here, when they showed the typical panel,
That right there, yeah, that was information that the applicant did supply. Our ordinance though, however, as far as the height of the screening device, it does not require screening devices to be any higher than 6 foot in height for this too. Or you could use supplemental screening with a solid fence, I believe it says in there.
okay, and what's here is acceptable to staff then, to you guys?
Yes, and let's go back to when we're looking at the overall picture and seeing where the property's located. The project overall, with both parcels, the parcel in the county and also the parcel in Marshall's jurisdiction, is well off the given road, both Old Page Lane, Marshville Road, and Old Highway 74. Where the supplemental planning really would take place is the property line closest to Old 74. That is basically, from standing on 74, looking out at that is open farmland is what it is. And we've also talked to the applicant about doing some additional tree planting to in and above what would be required with the screening device to add additional screening as well.
Okay, I guess, one reason I'm bringing this up, you're saying the shrub's 3 feet, but yet the height of the solar panel is 6 feet 7 inches, so really it's not going to camouflage or hide anything, it's just there for a barrier. Is that
Well,
correct?
and you know, as a condition of the use, you could always ask for a higher screening device. This is the minimum that's required per the ordinance for the intensity of the use.
Okay, the only reason I'm bringing this up, in the past, I have seen solar farms
Mm-hmm.
and heard comment from the surrounding neighbors saying, I wish we had known it was gonna look like this, we would have asked for more of a barrier around it to kind of camouflage it, hide it. That's the only reason I'm bringing that up.
And again, you know, the board, the responsibility of the board is you can either approve the request, you can deny the request, or you can modify the
Sure,
request.
sure.
So you do have that ability to add conditions,
Okay.
provided that the applicant agrees to them.
Sure.
Any other questions, Mr. King?
Where does the petition with Marshville stand right now?
That is going to the Marshville Board of Adjustment Thursday of this week.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you, sir. Okay. At this time, I would ask that all parties who would like to present evidence in favor of the petition, please come forward, and we're going to have to get you sworn. So, Mr. King, you're going to have to be our bailiff and take the Bible over there to him. Now you know how we treated Mr. Jensen. Y'all just come forward, please. Anyone who's going to speak, if you think you might speak, please come forward, be sworn. All right. You swear the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. I also need to make sure you all, you know this, but there's a little green piece of paper that you'll need to fill out to give to Susie when you leave, so we know who you are. And of course, you can get a decision of our board by filling out the white piece of paper that's somewhere over there. So whoever wants to speak first, please come forward and tell us who you are.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Suzanne Todd. I'm an attorney with Johnson, Nelson and Horde in Charlotte, and I'm here on behalf of BG Stewart Solar Farm LLC, our client. With me today, we've got a few folks. Is Tal McBride, the solar farm developer, as well as Damon Bidencope, Mr. Bidencope's an MAI appraiser, as well as Ted McGavran, He is a certified engineer. We're here tonight. I've handed out a booklet, or the clerk was kind enough to hand out a booklet to you. It contains affidavits with information that Mr. McGavran and Mr. Bidencope will be presenting to you tonight. I don't know if you want to review those affidavits, and then if you have any questions, we'll be available to respond. Or if you would like us just to make a short presentation, we don't want to take up your time any more than we have to.
Let me just say this, this entire book, we will call petitioner Exhibit A, and each tab will be A1, A2, A3, if that's okay with everybody?
That works.
Is that okay with everybody? All right. Okay,
We would ask that that be introduced in the record.
thank you.
And-
All right, why don't you go ahead and present what you want to present, and then if the board wants to go and individually ask people, we will call them up.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask Mr. McBride to speak first.
Okay, thank you.
Good
Please
evening.
state your name and where you're from.
Henry Talmadge McBride III. I'm from Bristol, Virginia, although my family is from Marshville.
Thank you, sir.
This is the second of 3 projects that I have, solar projects in Union County and the town of Marshville. The first one, this board approved on November 10th, and that's Old Pageland Monroe Road Solar Farm down White Store Road and near Rock Crest. This project is on property that my great uncle originally purchased, and then it's gone to my dad's sister and brother-in-law, and then to my 2 first cousins, and at their deaths to Bonnie Griffin Stewart, thus the name B.G. Stewart. The tract that we're talking about tonight, my cousin Greg sold to the Sanchez family. It's just a little bit over 16 acres, and it's the part that's in Union County's jurisdiction. Roughly 1/3 of the solar panels for the total project will be on this parcel, and 2/3 on Bonnie Griffin Stewart's parcel. I've seen Jim's presentation to the board previously, and we're in compliance with the zoning ordinances, and with his suggestions, recommendations to the board, we'll comply with those on the final site plan as we go forward.
Any questions? Yes.
Sorry. Will the project, not that I think that this can have a bearing on what we decide, but will the whole project move forward if only one of the 2 parcels is approved?
Probably not. And your question about where things stand in the town of Marshville, their hearing process was delayed. We were scheduled to be on their February hearing docket, but they continued their January hearing, so we got bumped until Thursday.
Gotcha.
All right. Any other questions? Mr. McBride? All right, thanks, sir. I think it's probably best we go ahead and just bring each person up.
Okay. I would ask Mr. Bidencope and Mr. McGavran if you want to just come on up.
Good evening. My name is Damon Bidencope. I'm a certified real estate appraiser in MAI here in the state of North Carolina, and therefore certified by the state in the statute 93E to give opinions of value as an expert in these matters. And I believe I've spoken with you before about that. What I would like to mention to you, and this would be behind tab 7, so if I can take just a little time for indulgence. What I think that the page that you really should look at, that I think helps establish where my opinion is, if you go forward to page 28 of that report, and I apologize if there's some redundant pages between 1 and 28, but when you get to 28, you'll see some recent research that we did on a solar farm here in North Carolina, showing residential values beside it. And that table that's on the top of that page it bunches sales based on those after the solar farm was installed at the top part of that page versus ones prior to that. And these are every single sale that's happened in this subdivision. And what you'll see overwhelmingly is that there's proof of solid price appreciation between the sales, and of no diminution at all in what these homes are selling for that are immediately adjacent and adjoining a solar farm. This particular one's north of Goldsboro, and it's probably the best example in the state right now. Then further to this research, we also located close to a solar farm in Zebulon, where actually a residential development is going in. So a developer's choosing to actually establish a residential development beside an existing solar farm. So we're also looking at that. So each time when we prepare these materials, we look back and we research what is most current. I think the latest sale that you'll see there is just of August last year. So it's reflecting current economic climate as well, not some past historic sort of dates and things. We also looked at land price takedowns and things like that. What we see is a lot of people very cautious and unknowing about what's coming and what's happening, but the actual reality is that there's no demonstrated damage that we're finding any factual basis. So I'm not really here to speak for or against. I'm here to just express my opinion, my belief in it, and answer any questions. So I just thought you'd like to look at that information. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. According to what you're saying, in the property value itself has not been affected by the solar farm in the areas that you've surveyed, but did you actually talk to the people to see the landowners in the area to see what their opinion was of the reaction to the sales or anything, or?
The best way to get the reaction is when an actual transfer happens, because then you've got cold hard cash getting exchanged, and that's what really is the underlying tenet of market value. Probable selling, willing seller, willing buyer, all acting in their own best interests. And so what we're looking for are these observations where the market actually has made those exchanges. These are our best examples to see that. A lot of people will come across with a belief, well, I'm not real sure about this or that, but that's not where the rubber hits the road in terms of what are the actual dollars and what are those sales showing. It's sometimes just loose opinion based, without solid foundations. When someone actually gets down to the sale of it and they've got to attract someone to come and buy a certain amount. That's why I'm weighting these transactions heavily in our process of determining value. Yes, I find there's a lot of times there's a lot of a reaction like, well, I'm not really sure what's happening, and people talk about all sorts of things which are nothing to do with what's actually going to happen. Oh, I've heard so-and-so say this, but that becomes all hearsay, and it's just not a good factual basis.
Okay, these instances that you're talking about, did this property, was it totally right adjacent to the solar farm, or was it a mile away or a half mile away?
It's on the preceding page on 26, I went ahead to include an aerial, and so you can see how the farm really butts up to this subdivision. And this is why I'm saying it's a very good example of immediately adjacent and adjoining properties. You can see how close that they're labeled there. Following on that page is also some of the land price appreciation that's shown. The red line on that graph shows when it was installed. And then there are some other images on the following pages in terms of how these are fairly low by comparison to other agricultural buildings that can sometimes go on similar land areas.
So what you're saying is the indications of the blue is the existing homes that were there, and the red were the homes that were built after the solar farm was installed?
Yes, I believe that that's the way we've coded those push pins.
And the red, basically property value of the red was not affected any by the farm itself?
The subsequent sales of a very homogeneous product, very similar property, showed marked appreciation. Didn't even show a leveling, showed marked appreciation in almost all instances. In fact, the averages there, it increased from $236,000 as an average price to $250,000.
Okay.
So it showed pretty solid evidence that there wasn't a diminution. In fact, there was general appreciation.
Okay.
Some of the other things later in the report, we looked at a number of farm installations to see where they went and what the other adjoining uses that were typical. What often people will think about is it doesn't generate very many doesn't generate traffic to their neighborhood, doesn't bring a lot of people in post-construction. It doesn't sort of tax a lot of other services that don't need to be required. At nighttime, produces no light, produces no noise from the project. Essentially just goes to sleep when the dark comes. So in that way, it's quite a good neighbor, more so than, say, a ball field on a school that might be floodlit at night, things like that that come up. So that was some of the things we looked at in terms of harmony of uses.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer other questions, but I don't want to take the time if there aren't any.
Mr. Bidenco, you are then, in your professional opinion, this would not substantially injure the property values?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
I may ask one question, and in your professional opinion, is this a harmonious use with the surrounding property uses?
Yes, yeah, I do think it'll be compatible and harmonious. While not the same use, it will certainly be harmonious in existence there, yes.
Thank you, sir.
I am Ted McGavran. I'm a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. I have run a consulting engineering business on my own since 1991. We have had numerous projects actually in Union County with both the city of Monroe and Union Power Cooperative. Those projects have included distribution line engineering and construction, spill prevention, countermeasure control plans at substations, actually designing substations and transmission lines throughout the county and really throughout the state and numerous states, which I am certified in. We have had a lot of experience the last few years with solar farm projects, both with interconnection with utilities, actually laying the things out and designing them and presenting facts to boards such as yours across several states. This is a pretty standard solar farm design here. The materials used for photovoltaic solar are basically silicon. It is not in any way does it present an environmental question, and they're totally clean in that respect. As far as EMF goes, what we're doing with solar farms, we're taking electromagnetic radiation from the sun and converting it to electricity, so there is no net increase in EMF due to these facilities. That's pretty much the long and short of that. There's just it does not pose any adverse environmental effects, and it basically interconnects with the Duke Energy distribution facilities out there, and that's the only impact that you've got, and that's essentially no impact.
Mr. McGavran, I believe your professional opinion is stated here that the solar farm will not materially endanger the public health or safety located where it's proposed. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is my opinion.
Thanks, sir.
I have one
Any
question.
questions?
How do you control water runoff? Because basically these panels are basically deflecting water. Water runs off the side of a house, it runs down and creates trenches in the surface below it. With this many panels together, how do you control water runoff?
Well, that's control. That will be in the site, the erosion control plan that will be filed with the site.
Okay.
It's no different than anything. It's no different than what you'd see in a substation, frankly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. McGavran? Thanks, sir.
On your question about the runoff, there's a drawing showing control of water off of there. If you look to the right of the top corner of the triangle, you'll see a dark green area. There's a drain right there, and all the water from the site runs from the back left corner to a pond that my aunt and uncle built. That's over there, and that's marked on the site plan as that's where the water goes.
Okay. So it won't cause any flood
No,
anywhere around? Okay.
All right.
I could just wrap up.
Before you do that, I would like to address a couple issues. I believe that we had staff had requested a decommissioning plan, and there were some questions, I believe, about the screenage. I'm not sure if you wanted to, but we need to talk about that. If we need to, we need to now.
My only concern is the screenage to me is kind of supposed to help camouflage and make it more user-friendly with the greenery. If the board feels that there's not a problem, I'll accept that.
One detail about that, if it will help you. From the top corner of the triangle, the driveway goes out to Old Highway 74. This doesn't show that, but there's probably between 6 and 7 feet of drop from Old Highway 74. The highest point is my cousin Greg's house, that the Sanchez's own now. And so when you're standing on 74 looking up, what you see is this, the grade of the
Okay.
ground. So if you add 3 feet to that, it makes a big difference.
Okay.
If you add 6 feet to that, your question was a good one, but it's cumulative to the grade of the ground.
Okay, that's good.
And we do have some tree cover to the backside, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Already existing that's gonna be saved.
Correct.
And then the other side's gonna connect to the property that's gonna be in Marshall anyway, and they'll have to worry about what they wanna do with the old Pageland side. That's their concern, I guess, ours, not ours.
I do want to point out that Mr. King did suggest an S2 buffer.
Right.
Which, when I did happen to look at in the ordinance, it's referred to as a high-profile buffer, and it does say, you know, that it is basically a 6-foot visual barrier. That's sort of its requirement.
Okay.
When it goes in to describe it. So I believe it would be at least 6 feet and, okay.
That'd be good. I'm good.
Is the board satisfied with that screenage?
I'm good.
All right, all right, let's talk about this decommissioning thing, because we've had this conversation in the past with regards to some other things that we approved.
Sure.
And it's like, what happens one day when nobody has a cell phone anymore that needs a tower? Who takes it down and why and how? And so what happens if somebody decides solar power is not worth it anymore?
Sure.
So we'll talk about that.
That's first of all, that's not likely to happen.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Second, there's a long-term contract in place with Duke Energy. So that's a 30-year contract. Presuming what you suggested, you know, that there's some breakthrough in technology or whatever, and it gets decommissioned. You say, well, that's passé technology now, we're gonna take it out. What's more likely to happen is the solar panels themselves that are mounted on the racks, there will be an advance or breakthrough there, and they'll be, you know, those will be replaced with a newer, better, 100-mile-a-gallon car, so to speak. Failing that, everything that's driven into the ground, like a fence post, comes back out, it's steel. It has a very good recycle value, and it will all be reclaimed. And of all the uses that I've been involved in, as growing up on a farm and the like, you take those things back out, you can put the land back so you can't tell it was there. That's the only use. I mean, you go out there and build houses or anything like that, put up poultry houses, real tough to make it look like it did before.
But what is the length of time, though, if tomorrow Duke Power were to call and say, we're not gonna do this anymore, it's y'all's, how long would it take you to clean it up?
Probably less time than it takes to put it in, which is about
That's-
3 months to install it, and probably take it out in 30 days to 6 weeks.
Is that noted in your application and so forth?
No, sir, we haven't submitted a decommissioning plan. Jim's asked for that, but that's the parameter that you would be. It's like tearing a house down versus building one. When you go, it's a lot faster coming out than it is going in.
I think that ought to be in place.
I'd like to make sure we're being consistent. I don't, in the solar farm that they proposed in November, I don't believe we had that as a condition.
We
And so
did.
we did or did
We
not?
did not.
Okay.
It's
So I
been
just want to be
something-
consistent in what and not putting undue burdens on some.
I agree, but I also believe that at some point we need to start addressing these things, and that day has to start somewhere, and it's nothing against you, obviously. It's just like with the cell towers too, we've talked about, is it, what would happen, should someday everything go to a satellite, and there's all these cell towers in Union County, who's gonna take them down, who's responsible? Here we are, we're approving them, and nobody's thought about this, so at some point we need to make that call, I think, and
I think we need to do it
I'm not
now.
sure if it's tonight or not, but at some point we need to, and I appreciate you bringing that up as something we need to talk about, and I don't think it's asking anybody to come up with anything significant, it's just telling us how you're gonna do it, and making it part of it, I think. Is that what you were thinking, Mr. King, is just a plan?
Just plan.
How difficult would that be to put on paper?
I don't think it would be that difficult, but I'd like to do it, you know, when we submit the site plan.
Sure. And I think we could potentially, is that something that we could give Mr. King a authority to approve?
I think
I don't see
Yeah.
why not. I
Yeah,
don't see
I
why
think so.
not. I don't think the board's asking you to do it, and
Yeah, I'll-
we're giving him, we can give him the authority to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Mr. McGavern can prepare that for
Okay.
Jim as well. He does them all the time.
Okay. That's, if that's okay with you
That's
guys,
good
and
with
we'll
me.
give Mr. King the authority to approve that and negotiate if he don't like it. I think he can handle that.
Well, with what's been said, would we feel like 6 months after it's quit being used would be an appropriate timeline? Because even though you said it would come up faster and you so on, but 6 months, wouldn't that be a fair timeline?
Yeah, the language that you typically see, I mean, I've built wind farms and solar farms, that's when it's not productive for 6 months. When it's idle for 6 months, it's considered abandoned by default, and then the decommissioning plan kicks in that day. The clock starts.
I think that's something.
Right, and then you
Jim
hit-
could
right.
decide.
Yeah,
That's
it's,
something
Well,
that
at
Jim
least
could
we got the
decide.
opportunity here to
Yeah, I
set it,
think-
let's do it.
Well, I don't know that we need to set it.
no.
Or just say the 6-month timeline.
Staff will be comfortable with that because typically when you talk about a non-conforming use, 180 days is a typical time frame for it.
Okay. I think that's good.
Yep.
I trust our staff to handle that.
Yep.
And we're just, as a part of the approval, I believe we're going to state that a decommissioning plan will have to be presented and approved by staff, so.
That's perfectly.
Is that
agreed.
okay with y'all?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, sir.
Good.
I'm glad we handled that. That was easy. That didn't hurt nobody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
That's good. Is there anything else you need to present? You can go ahead and do your closing argument, 'cause I believe we handled those two items quite quickly.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight. I just wanted to kind of run through what all is in here in this booklet. You will see, just noting some important things behind tab 4, there is, our erosion control and drainage calculations. This project is largely, pervious. Really only the concrete pads, which are maybe 50 by 50 or small pads of concrete on which the inverters sit. The rest of this whole project, probably 98% of it, is completely pervious to allow for water drainage and everything. So that information is in there for your review. As well as behind tab 5 is what's called a certificate of public convenience necessity. The legislature has deemed that renewable energy is important and in the public interest. And every property, every project prior to getting entitlements, prior to being constructed, has to receive this certificate from the Utilities Commission. So I think that's a very important thing to show that this is a public necessity. These are important. And then you've got the 2 affidavits. And last, I have prepared some proposed findings of fact behind tab 9. It's sort of a buffet of things for you to select from.
I don't have a tab 9, I have a tab 8.
I'm sorry, tab 8, I apologize. And this information will either be presented in testimony or will have, be in the affidavits. And the last thing I just ask, Mr. King, if he, in your opinion, does our application meet zoning ordinance requirements?
Based on testimony and everything, we would have to get to the site plan review. As I said before, this is conceptual in nature. The concept is in keeping with the ordinance and the comprehensive land use plan, and we will tag down the specifics during site plan review.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. At this time, I would ask that anyone who would like to present evidence in opposition to the petition, please come forward and be sworn. I have to say that even though I really don't see anybody. Could be sneaking around out there somewhere. All right, I see none. Therefore, board, if you have any other questions that you need to ask before we close the hearing, now will be the time to do that.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
This being a special use permit, it cannot carry over to anything other than what we're specifying here, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Okay, this time I'll close the public hearing. Then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the petition with the conditions as specified by staff, including the decommissioning plan and the S2 screening as appropriate.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're done. Thank you. We had anything else on our agenda tonight, ladies and gentlemen? That was quick, and thank everyone for your. everyone
Nice
doing a
work,
good job
Jeremy.
tonight.
Let us turn the report off before any conversations start.
Okay, we will do that, but I need to adjourn the meeting first, so
Make a motion with adjourn.
motion adjourned.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Fabulous. How's your mom doing, Dad?
Doing great. Well,